Let's talk about some command options. So there's a thing called NX and XX, and basically what you want to do is like, all right, Redis, set this, and if it does exist, fail, or set this, and if it doesn't exist, fail, right? So you're kind of giving it like a condition that I only want to set this if it already exists, or I only want to set this if it doesn't exist. So let's just kind of do an example here. So if I say set color, and I have not set color yet, right? So if I say exists color, it's going to say 0, right? So if I say set color blue, and then I put XX here, this is going to fail because this doesn't exist yet, right? And so if I say, again, exists color, it's going to say no, still doesn't exist. So that's what this XX does, this option here. It basically says, if this doesn't exist, don't set it, this should fail. Let me show you the flip side of that. If I say set color NX, if it doesn't exist, then it's going to succeed. It doesn't exist right now, so this will work. So you can see here it says, okay, worked. Exist color, it does exist. Get color, it should say blue. Now, let's say if I say set color green, and I put XX, this will succeed because color already exists, right? Says okay. But now if I try and say set color yellow, NX, this will fail because it does exist. So you're just kind of trying to say, you want to add a condition that this only works if it does or doesn't exist. This is occasionally useful. I'm not even going to say it's probably pretty rarely useful to me, but it's probably just good to know that it's out there, that if you do need something, some behavior like that, you can do it in one query instead of asking exists and then set it. You can actually just do it in one query and say, if this query fails, then I knew it already existed or it already didn't exist. So actually, if we go back to our set plain, the one that I was doing before, this get plain 0, 0. Before, if I was doing this, I would have had to do 2 queries every time. Does this exist? And if it does, don't go that way. I could just do this with an NX, right? And then I could just see if the query succeeded or failed. That would be a good use case for using this XX and NX. Makes sense? For the record, I could never keep straight if XX or NX does what. I have to look it up every single time. That's totally fine. The way that I can kind of keep it in my mind is that NX succeeds when it does not exist, when it not exists, right? I'll forget that in 20 minutes, though. I can never remember. You can see I have to look at my notes every single time that I say it out loud, so I don't look like an idiot. More so than I already do. Let's talk about TTLs. This one actually is fairly useful to me. I haven't talked about TTLs in other databases. They actually do exist in Postgres. They do exist in MongoDB for sure. I'm going to assume they exist in Neo4j. I've never actually looked. But let's talk about it because I use them all the time in Redis. TTL stands for time to live. And basically it says that at some point I want this thing to expire. Like I want you to delete this after 30 seconds. So a good example of when to use this, let's say you're querying your telemetry data, but you want to do it every single day. What you can do is like, okay, put this in cache, save it for a day, and then after a day, just go ahead and delete it. And that's what a TTL does. So let's say you're writing like a fitness app. So you could say set fitness, the amount of total work done today by the user BT Holt, and you can say that I burned 700, or I did 750 kilojoules of work today. I'd be proud of myself if I did that. I did not do that today. Okay. But let's say I need to refresh this view every single day, and I don't want to just have it, go stale. So what you can do is you can give it a TTL. So if I put EX, you can think expires in 3,600 seconds. So the EX is in seconds. Keep that in mind. Now, this will end up, staying alive for, what is it, like 12 hours or something like that? Whatever, 3,600. It's been a long day. I cannot do math in my head right now. So that's 300 minutes divided by 60. 5 hours. I don't know why I chose 5 hours, but there you go. So now I can say get fitness total BT Holt, and it'll get that back. But after a certain amount of time, 3,600 seconds, it's going to expire, right? So let's just see an example of that. So I'm going to say set temp key to be high, and we'll give an expiry of 5 seconds. Let's see if I can do this fast enough. Get temp key, it'll say high, but if I keep doing this, in fact, there you can see there, it expired, now it's gone, it deletes itself. So that's a TTL. You can do it with EX. There's also PX, and this is milliseconds. So if I put 1,000, that's like 1,000 milliseconds. Typically, I don't need PX, but it's there if you need something more granular. Let's talk just a moment about the thundering herd. Now, if you're a web developer, you've either heard that term before and you just cringe inside when you hear the term thundering herd, or you haven't experienced it yet, and hopefully I can save you from experiencing it, but I probably won't, and you probably will at some point in your web development career. Thundering herd is this idea that your cache expires, and before you can refresh the cache, all these people come in and start hitting your database, and everything just falls apart because it's a thundering herd that just crashes on your database. So let me give you an example of that. A common way of doing caching is saying, if I can find this thing in the cache, serve it from the cache. If I can't find it from the cache, go get it from the database, and then serve it to, or then set it in the cache and serve it to the user, right? That's kind of a obvious way of doing caching, right? If I can get it, serve it. If I can't, go get it and then set it so I don't have to do it again later. And you'll do that with TTLs, right? You'll say this cache is good for 6 hours. So here's the problem with that particular setup. If you set it up like that, during that very short window of when the cache has expired and it hasn't yet been set in the cache again, there's a period of time where if you have 2,000 users all hit that one endpoint, they are all going to hit the database, and they're not going to hit the cache. And it's called the thundering herd. It's going to bring your app server down. This has happened to me multiple times, specifically at Reddit. We were doing a flash sale in our marketplace on Reddit, and we hit the thundering herd, and I think we went down for like 2 hours on Black Friday. It was a disaster for like our e-commerce. So hopefully I can save you a bit of grief. So let me talk about how do you avoid thundering herd with TTLs. Well, one, don't use TTLs with caches in this particular scenario. The much better way of doing this is leaving that cache there and then having like a cron job or some periodically running job in the background that will go and set the cache so that the cache is always there, and then there's some background job that's just resetting the cache every so often. And you're not relying on the app server to do it because you're going to hit the thundering herd.